Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is March 15th, 2021. Today's show has been a long time in the making. It's actually something we started to discuss on this show back in 2018. It was an episode of Casual Friday. I wish I can find it because I actually predicted what we're going to discuss was going to happen. Glyphosate and other herbicides are antimicrobial in nature. And I said on that show, the difference between an antibiotic and an antimicrobial is dose and duration of exposure, which means that an antimicrobial can act like a weak antibiotic. And we saw this happen in the weeds that glyphosate was killing. They were getting stronger. They were having to use twice as much, 3 times as much, 5 times as much. And then after a while, it didn't work. And then they had to add dicamba, because part of evolution is, like people love to say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And the constant application of these antimicrobials on crops actually helped the pathogens get stronger and more resistant. We talked about this in 2018 with yet another romaine lettuce recall from California. And I actually predicted that at some point in time, we're going to have antibiotic-resistant forms of microbes and pathogens that people will eat on their produce. You know, antibiotic resistance is a big thing in the United States. There are 2.8 million people who contract an antibiotic-resistant fungus or pathogen every year. 35,000 of them will die from it. And it is the leading issue in medicine today is how do we prepare for antibiotic-resistant pathogens? How do we help people save their own lives? And we always thought it was because doctors prescribe antibiotics so often that this must be what is causing the problem, but maybe not. Maybe that's part of it, but maybe the other part of it is what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to get started with that in just a second. So before we do that, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods. Check out the tasty pastry. If you like Pop-Tarts, you'll love this even more. 20 grams of protein, less than 1 gram of sugar, 5 net carbs. The new red velvet cake tasty pastry. If you buy them, they'll all be gone. Buy twice as much as you think you need. I promise you. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. If you're too cheap to buy them, you could win a box. Listen to every episode of Superhuman Radio has a secret word hidden during a commercial break. Email me the secret word to onair@superhumanradio.net and you're entered to win. We're giving away more than 1 box a day. Lots of people are very, very happy and excited. There's your opportunity right there if you don't want to buy them. And now, without further delay, let's bring my guest on and get my artwork set up here. Hold on 1 second. I produce my own shows, so I'm slow. Dr. Ville Friman, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No, this is really important stuff. I know a lot of people may think, but this is really important stuff because this is just a glimpse of what's yet to come, in my humble opinion. So you heard my little dissertation. Is what I said remotely correct? Absolutely correct? I'm partially right, partially wrong. What's your opinion?
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, I agree. Like antibiotic resistance is a broader problem. It's not only, driven by antibiotic use in clinical setting. It is used by antibiotics we use and are actually exposed and disposed to the environment. So if you just think about it, lots of the antibiotics we consume will get to the sewage waste. It will actually get to the environments. It will get to the lakes, and then lots of these antibiotics are actually still in active form. So even though they will definitely get diluted when they get to the environment, they still remain active, and they can impose selection for antibiotic-resistant bacteria in wider environments. So it is really a more broader, significant problem where we should think about the environmental compartment, not only lakes and aquatic environments, but also agricultural environments.
And a lot of these antimicrobials are a result of runoff of water in agriculture today, because glyphosate, dicamba, I'm trying to think of all the others. There's 4 major herbicides used today. What people don't understand about these herbicides is they are effectively weak antibiotics. They are very strong antimicrobials. So what led to this research? What were you looking at? What would have colleagues done that made you say, wow, we need to get to the bottom of this with this study?
So, antibiotics have been used in animal husbandry for quite a long time just to increase the yield and the growth of the animals. So they've been used as a kind of growth additives. Of course, this is banned in most of the countries, but it's still happening. It's not banned everywhere. Similarly, people tend to use small amounts of heavy metals to induce meat production and growth of animals. And
Right.
then there's a one clear link. This is kind of historical old link, but these heavy metals are also toxic for bacteria. They can be considered as antimicrobial. And quite often, the resistance mechanisms bacteria have against both antibiotics and heavy metals, they're actually co-located in small chromosomal, extrachromosomal DNA particles called plasmids. And then basically, you have a co-selection for both type of resistances. They're located in the same genetic, mobile genetic element that can actually quite easily move between different bacterial cells. And then, when you have selection by heavy metals, you're also selecting for antibiotic resistance and vice versa. So this is the kind of old story, and we know that's been out there for a long time. Of course, we're releasing lots of other chemicals to the environments. And if you think about herbicides, we're using them loads all the time. And then, there's been some studies previously showing this sort of link. But I think we were first one to study this in more kind of natural soil systems, agricultural systems. There's been few lab studies focusing on the effects of herbicides on bacteria, and they found similar things. But of course, if you do something in a lab environment, in an aquatic culture, it's quite far from natural environment. Soil is porous environments, it's heterogeneous environments, and we've been the kind of first one to show that. And then I think I've been working with the first author, Chinese author, for 4 years, I think now. And then we've been mainly focused on antibiotic-resistant genes in the animal manure and sewage sludge. So basically waste we have to deal some way. Quite often people just discard that. It's not treated anyway and it gets to the environment. So we kind of just spreading around antibiotic-resistant bacteria and antibiotic-resistant genes to the environment. And then we've been studying first using composting to reduce the amount of antibiotic-resistant genes and antibiotic-resistant bacteria in these waste products. So you can use manure, you can combine that with a straw or other sort of agricultural waste product from plants we can't eat or use anything. And you can ferment that into basically fertilizer as a compost, as a soil, which is rich in nutrients and can be used by plants. So it's actually a very good way and clever way to recycle our waste that is actually nutritious and contains lots of energy that can be employed by the plants, used by plants for their growth. But of course, we need to take care that we're not releasing antibiotic-resistant genes or antibiotic-resistant bacteria along with that. Because, if you think about rumen of a cow, they do include lots of pathogenic bacteria, E. coli and other bacteria that are also harmful for us. So we don't want to kind of enrich those bacteria in the environments because it increases the risks that we might actually got up with them.
Well, and in fact, in the recall of 2018 that I was referring to, the E. coli that was found on the romaine lettuce is the same E. coli found in the guts of ruminant animals that are being fed grain as opposed to grass. 1517, I want to say, or 17 E. coli, 15. Yeah. So this is the one that we know is very harmful. What I predicted in that show was the application of so that E. coli could have been put on those plants by the water irrigation systems that they roll over the crops. So let's say it was there, but then the application of these antimicrobials, which are herbicides, actually made the E. coli strong, because that's what they said. They said this E. coli appears to be stronger. It's getting sure, but we're not killing it. We're using these herbicides to actually make it stronger and more resistant, and it's hurting people more to a greater degree. Yeah. So when we look at, explain how herbicides work for the audience in case they're not clear on the mechanisms of how they work.
Yes, so the kind of thought to target on a eukaryotic animal, for eukaryotic organisms such as plants, and then you think about the eukaryotes are multicellular. They're quite different from the bacteria, and the idea is that bacteria they don't have the target of that herbicide, so they should be safe. But some of these targets they have are quite conserved. So, and what that means is that they can be found with bacteria or human cells or plant cells. So there could be some link there. Of course, doses have to be quite different. Something that is, how antibiotics work, it is based on the fact that the dose we use is lethal for the bacteria, but it's not too harmful for us. Because antibiotics are also toxic for human cells, they're toxic for us. We can't take too high concentration of antibiotics because it's actually bad for us. So it's about kind of finding that balance where you use antibiotics in concentrations that are harmful for the bacteria, but not too harmful to us. So in the same way, herbicides, they tend to be antimicrobial. We don't know exactly, based on this study, how they are damaging the bacterial cells. We try to do that. We try different ways, but we do find that when you expose the bacteria to herbicide for prolonged periods of time, they do evolve resistance, and they can grow better in the presence of herbicides. And as a side result, they can grow also better in the presence of different antimicrobials and antibiotics. And then basically what we found is that the same mutations that help bacteria to survive antibiotics also help them to grow in the presence of herbicides. So, and then if you think about like what are antibiotics, they are actually quite often derived from bacteria or fungi. So it's a result of microbial warfare. So basically it's microbes competing for the space and nutrients with each other, and they're producing this toxin to kill other competitors nearby them. And then, we just kind of discovered them, and then, actually we can use their own weapons against them in a way.
Hmm.
So if you think about antibiotics, they've been there always. They always been in the soil. It's a part of the bacterial sort of ecology, how they are and how they behave. And so we know that we have those resistant genes. They are there because they're part of that inherent competitive interactions. But what the herbicides then do is that they are increasing the benefit of carrying these resistant genes more than would happen naturally. So this is kind of called, it's the same thing we would apply loads of antibiotics. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria are not necessarily good at competing and growing unless there's antibiotics present in that environment.
Because the antibiotic does their job and kills everything else, but leaves the pain for them.
Exactly. So, and the herbicides are doing the kind of similar thing. They're kind of favoring, making the environment favorable for those resistant bacteria. They can survive, everybody else get killed, or they grow, they might not even get killed. But if they have some negative effects on their growth, they will kind of lose out in competition.
Right.
So you're kind of creating this beneficial environment favoring these resistant bacteria.
Yeah, because they're actually the weaker. They're not as robust. But so it sounds to me like what you've also discovered is how we should be treating some of these pathogens, and maybe not necessarily scorching the earth and killing everything, but maybe investing more science in how to create highly competitive, non-harmful pathogens to compete for the same space in the body.
Exactly. So it has been shown quite repeatedly that when we apply antibiotics, when we have to take antibiotics, of course, I'm not saying that we shouldn't take antibiotics. I think the antibiotics are really, really, they're crucial for the human
life. Right. You can't be stupid.
Exactly. But the one kind of side effect is that they're seldom specific. So they will target also our beneficial gut bacteria. So you have some sort of collateral damage. And, normally it's okay if you don't have to take antibiotics for long periods of time. But for example, if you're suffering some chronic infections and you need to take antibiotics repeatedly, that will cause harm with your gut microbiota. You will have some gastrointestinal problems as well. And it has been shown that, even the short-term exposure to antibiotics, our gut is quite resilient. It can kind of bounce back, but still it might not bounce back exactly the same. So we're kind of inducing these sort of negative effects with the antibiotics as well.
Right.
And as you say, if we would have something that is more specific to the pathogens that will leave the beneficial microbiota unharmed, that would be much better treatment.
So my earliest thought, and it always has been, is to buy organic produce and vegetables as often as possible, because the conventionally grown products today, just about everything, tomatoes as well, they modify them not to make them more nutritious, not to make them even more tasty, but they modify them so that conventional agriculture can use more and more pesticides and not kill the plant, but kill all the weeds around it.
Yeah.
And so I have to believe that conventionally grown produce is probably at the greatest risk of carrying and implanting antibiotic-resistant pathogens into a person who consumes them than, say, organic, where they're not using pesticides and they're using heritage approaches to farming to manage weeds without using antimicrobials. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I'm not 100% sure if there's really enough data on this, but it would be really, really interesting research topic to really kind of compare what are the benefits. And then, I mean, like, I think we do need sort of, we're in a phase that, human population is expanding. We're really kind of, there's a climate change. We're really changing the environment, and we're really in a kind of in a bad spot in a way. We have to use all the tools we can to feed the population And I think technology is answered there, but I think we need to do that safe way and be aware of the risks. So organic farming, you might use lots of manure which is not treated, so you might be kind of actually introducing antibiotic-resistant bacteria in the soil along with the manure without really realizing that. If you have really high, high-tech agricultural monoculture where you use then genetically modified crops that can take more of the herbicides, then you might be selecting more antibiotic-resistant bacteria in situ. So it's hard to kind of see it. It really comes down to the relative effects, and I think there's not enough data probably at the moment to say this.
Well, I've done numbers of shows over the years with some of the greatest land grant universities like Washington State, the University of Illinois, where they looked at whether or not the yield is increased by using the new chemical agricultural model. And it's not. In soybeans, you may end up with 1 or 2 bushels more organically grown soybeans. However, your profits are a lot lower because you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on these chemicals.
Yeah.
So now we're starting to learn that maybe returning to the methods of years back before chemical agriculture became the thing may actually not only be more profitable for the farmers, but produce a healthier plant for the consumer to eat, with the understanding, as you point out, that if you're using manure, then the process after it's harvested, there has to be more steps in there to make sure that everything is washed off of the plant before it's sent out to market.
Yeah. So, and I think also big companies versus small scale farmers. Where are we located? In the world as well, agriculture is very different, and it is not only like economical agriculture. It's also question about like what kind of society we want to live in, how we want to produce food. So these are really complex questions, but I do agree. Like organic farming can be sustainable as well if we can do that as a whole global scale. I'm not 100% sure. I don't have enough experience to answer that question. But we do buy organic vegetables every week, and try to do that our best. But for example, with the genetic engineering, I'm not, it's one of those things that can be done, I think, fairly, and it can be done also safely. But I'm not saying that nuclear power, for example, is a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing if it's done safely. It's not necessarily the final solution or something we should kind of be happy with the rest of our lives or down the road in the future. But it might be a good answer now when we don't have any cleaner energy. But same with the genetic engineering. I'm actually involved in few projects as well where we look combining old lost resistance genes to some of the crops we use today, for example, in potato. So lots of the crops we use, we've basically used natural selection. We've evolved them the way we like to have them. So they're producing larger crop, they're producing larger fruit, and they're more edible. They don't contain any more the toxins that they used to have, the wild cultivars. They're quite often not so good for us, for animals to consume.
Right.
So in this historical process, we've kind of lost some natural defense genes they used to have, and when they're kind of lost, they're impossible to bring back. Or you might be able to make hybrids where you take some older crop cultivars and then you recombine them with the modern ones. But it's a bit of a hit and miss because you might lose some good aspects of your modern crop if you combine.
Yeah, and it could literally take decades.
Yeah,
to end up with the crop that you want, and farmers need to sell stuff today. You know what I mean? They can't wait decades.
Yeah, we need solution faster. So So in that way, it's possible to transfer genes from the wild relatives to the same crop. So I think kind of, genetic modification, I think it has a bit of the kind of, Hollywood effect in a way that we're just creating some kind of monster, but just taking stuff across species borders. But, it's not always that.
I want to take a quick commercial break, but before we do that, I want to promote your website. So this is your website, right? Ville Friman Science. It's VILLEFRIMAN science.weebly.com. And people can learn all about all the stuff that you're working on, evolution of interactions in a changing world. Because I think that most people think that somehow evolution has stopped. It only happened back then. It's not happening now. And we're seeing evolution in the human species today. We're seeing evolution in plant species today. Evolution continues to go on. And I feel it's a big mistake for modern medicine to ignore evolution when discussing disease states. And I think farming needs to as well. It shouldn't be a cool thing like, oh, yeah, we farm the old-fashioned way. We're hippies. No, every farmer should understand the evolution of his crop, and so he can understand what he's doing and what he's not that could benefit or not or hurt.
I agree.
But that's the website. Let me plug it one more time. So the website is Ville Friman Science, VILLEFRIMAN science.weebly.com. You can learn more there. We're going to take one quick commercial break. We'll be back with more. You're listening to and watching Superhuman Radio. Stay tuned. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Celluma light therapy. Celluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Celluma, that's CELLUMA, and use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. Glyphosate. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering delivering better today. As a listener of this show, you know how important your gut is to your overall health. Bioptimizers has a potent product to heal and repair your gut unlike anything else. It's called Leaky Gut Guardian. It's powered by patented IGY Max, an egg-based protein that enhances gut health, reverses antibiotic damage, and strengthens your immune system. Available in 2 delicious powders, vegetarian vanilla and chocolate carnivore. Simply mix it with your favorite beverage. Repair your gut and power up your immune system risk-free and save 10% off. Go to shrnetwork.biz/leakygut. Don't delay. Fix your gut today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. So let's talk about your research itself. How was the study designed?
So it was designed first to do something in the lab. So we've been kind of working with Liao, the Chinese first author, using kind of natural systems, which are often hard to control. So, you know, environment is changing, you have different temperature variations and so on. So we want to kind of take some semi-natural approach where we have some soil, we have natural communities, which we then assembled in a very kind of small setting in the lab. And basically it's a jar full of soil. That's how everything started. And we were applying herbicides into these soil microcosms, having control treatments, which were treated with water only. And we're looking, using genomic sequencing, to try to see what is happening to the abundance of antibiotic-resistant genes and mobile genetic elements that might be moving them around in the microbial communities. And we basically found out, we get a clear increase in antibiotic-resistant genes when we applied herbicides. And then we started doing more kind of lab-based experiments where we tried to understand a bit of the mechanisms, what might be driving this. And we found 2 interesting mechanisms. First is that if we used an approach called experimental evolution. So you mentioned, you know, we see evolution under our eyes all the time. We can also run evolutionary experiments in the lab. And how can it work? You can start your cultures by using one bacterial species, which is isogenic, means that there's no genetic variation. And then you expose that bacteria to herbicides. And do that repeatedly. You're culturing the bacteria in your test tube, transferring to the same condition, and basically imposing selection, in this case, herbicides. And we could see that slowly there will be mutations accumulating. And some of these mutations are actually beneficial for the bacteria. Mm-hmm. And we were able to run this experiment for around 900 bacterial generations. Then we took some of those strains that were able to both resist herbicides and antibiotics. And then we did some sequencing to try to understand which mutations, which genetic molecular mechanisms might be explaining this. And we found lots of known antibiotic resistance genes that were selected in these conditions and linked to them, basically making the cell membrane, for example, less permeable. So less antibiotics will be getting through the cell membrane and causing damage to the bacteria. We also saw other things like hydrolytic enzymes that are also able to break down antibiotics when they get inside the bacterial cells. So different mechanisms were found to be selected. And then essentially it's something that happened in around 900 bacterial generations. These mutations just appear with bacteria naturally. And because of herbicide selection, they were selected for the bacteria. They were beneficial for the bacteria. And through these multiple hundreds of generations, they become the most dominant bacterial genotypes in these experiments. So, you know, it was really easy to, and this is the kind of, I would say, kind of strength of testing these hypotheses. you can do a direct experiment where you can, causally show this one thing is actually leading to this outcome.
Right.
So, it is, it's not correlation you might see just when you observe different sizes in the field. You might get a correlation that, when you use glyphosate, you have higher abundance of antibiotic-resistant genes compared to the environment where you don't. He did that sort of comparisons as well in natural agricultural fields and non-agricultural fields in China. And we find the same patterns, more antibiotic-resistant genes when you're applying herbicides. But it's just correlation. It's not really showing that, the herbicide.
Right. Yeah, you would have to study and watch the genetic changes occur over time and say, look, this is what's making it change.
Yeah, exactly. It's a causal direct evidence. And another mechanism we were able to find was that antibiotics are also promoting the movement of these mobile genetic elements. I mentioned before plasmids. So a small piece of DNA that can freely move between different bacterial species. So we just put few species together. One of them was carrying this antibiotic-resistant plasmid. And then if you expose these small molecule communities to herbicides, it promotes the movement of that plasmid between different bacteria. So you could kind of track down that herbicide selection is enforcing or promoting the movement of those antibiotic-resistant genes in bacterial population. So population that had one resistant bacteria and was one susceptible bacteria became actually dominated by resistant bacteria, resistant bacteria quite quickly.
Yeah, that shows the trajectory of the evolution, number one. But the interesting thing about that is, so this plasmid, it's a piece of the DNA. So when it goes in, does it find a place in the DNA strand to put itself? And is that place specifically required to develop the resistance?
It can kind of coexist independently. It doesn't. It just needs to go inside the cell. And quite often you might have high number of these plasmids. They can make copy of themselves. Sometimes they're called conjugated plasmids. They might also have genes that helps them to promote and spread between bacterial species. So they might encode this sort of, it's called pilus. Basically, it's a kind of cell appendage from the cell surface that can kind of build a bridge between two bacteria. And the plasmids can then move along this bridge to the donor cell. So they're also kind of sort of, you could say, like genetic parasites that might have also benefits for the host. So
there's also evidence of intelligence here when you think about this, right? So when the community is not capable of surviving, given the insult, whether it's antibiotic or microbial, and there's one in there that has this plasmid, it knows to share it with everybody, and everyone knows to accept it because this will help them survive. When you think about that, we're talking about, microbes don't have a nucleus, right? They don't. They're not eukaryotes. They're what?
They have the chromosome is just like floating around. It's not.
Yeah. But yet, even though these are considered pretty stupid in the hierarchy of the food chain, with fungi actually being smarter than them, they know that, hey, give me that plasmid. I need that before this thing kills me.
Yeah. So, it is weird. These plasmids, they can act as a parasites. So if you think about the plasmids are also selfish. They just want to spread around as far as they can. So, and they can be parasitic in a way that they just spread around and they don't even ask for bacteria. If I can come in, they just, I'll just do it because I can. And then, of course, bacteria, they have ways of discriminating these plasmids. They can recognize the foreign DNA and try to cleave that and destroy it because, it's not beneficial for them. It's likely to be a parasite or something, it's not going to be beneficial to me. So they fight against it. But it's quite complex molecular interactions you have. So you can think about the plasmid doesn't exist alone. It needs always host. But host can discriminate and dispel it. But if they are encoding some other beneficial functions like antibiotic-resistant genes, it's likely that they're going to be accepted by the bacteria because there's something good going on, or
Right.
and it might be also that this happens only in the presence of antibiotics or herbicides. But when you kind of remove the herbicide and antibiotics, then the bacteria
They
start
kill the
fighting
plasmid.
against it.
Yeah, then they fight the plasmid. Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's fascinating, but your brain gets easily kind of just overwhelmed. There's so many different interactions and possibilities, and that's just kind of inherent, property of biology. It's quite complex and dynamic.
I want to make another prediction. Okay. So you said about the cell membrane permeability being an issue, and obviously these plasmids helping to develop resistance to the insult. And I believe that agriculture and science will get together and they'll say, okay, we have to find a way to pierce the membrane, create membrane permeability to carry the glyphosate or dicamba in. That will be one thing they'll do. The other thing they'll do is they'll look at the transfer to plasmids. Then they'll also look at, you mentioned that some of these actually can start to use the antimicrobials. They'll like change it, convert it inside the cell. They'll look at these three things. They'll say, okay, we need to target those three things to make our drugs, and they are drugs, more successful. And then in a decade, the microbes will evolve to derail those methods because they'll get infinitely stronger and those methods won't be effective anymore. What we have to understand and have respect for is evolution. And what I mean by that is every single living thing on this planet strives for two things: survival and offspring. So if the offspring is part of the cycle of life for that, whether it's a splitting into multiple, those are the two things that are most important. It will always work to survive, and it will always work to increase the trajectory of the species, always. And any approach by modern science to eliminate those two characteristics of a species will only create a stronger, more resilient, more robust species. Because they will not go, oh, okay, the species is going to go away now because look, these herbicides, we should have killed everything by now. They stay in the soil. No, the microbes, the pathogens, they're just getting stronger. The weeds got stronger. I remember the article a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, saying that glyphosate isn't working anymore. They're going to add dicamba because the weeds are just becoming more and more robust and they can't afford to spray more. So they have to have something stronger. It's evolution. Have respect for it.
Yeah. So, quite often when you have this kind of strong directional selection, you have herbicides or you have antibiotics, you evolve that resistance. Quite often that resistance is actually costly for the bacteria. So, if you remove that antibiotic selection, actually that bacteria that is resistant is quite often, less competitive against its susceptible counterpart. But what happens during this prolonged selection is that you're also selecting additional adaptations that are kind of refining that resistance. So quite often you get, in the case of antibiotic resistance, you get compensatory mutations. So the mutations that are giving you resistance are costly, and then maybe the selection against them when you don't have antibiotics in the environment. But when you have this buildup of these refining compensatory mutations, that actually reduces the cost, and that kind of increases the chances that the antibiotic-resistant bacteria, they can prevail regardless of the presence of antibiotics in the environment. So this is happening, and this is kind of one way how you can kind of build up this sort of resistance and an increase in resistance all the time. So it's not only the appearance of the resistant mutation, but it's also all the other mutations that are kind of helping the species or bacteria overcome those initial costs and refine the initial adaptation. That's happened throughout the history of life with all the organisms. And this is just true with the pathogen as well.
So did you notice any differences in the effects of one herbicide over another? Dicamba was introduced because things like glyphosate weren't working any longer. And for those who don't recall, I'm pretty sure dicamba was one of the ingredients in Agent Orange, which was sprayed on foliage in Vietnam during the Vietnamese War, and it proved to be very harmful to the human that came in contact with it. And of course, the plants all died, the trees all died. But was there evidence that the stronger dicamba through the 900 generations actually was more effective, or it came on sooner?
I think we didn't really compare all the different, specifically we didn't kind of look that maybe, but we have that data, and we did get, like, dicamba was really good at promoting the movement of these plasmids between the different bacteria. And then, glufosinate and glyphosate, they had bit different effects. So there was a bit of a flavor. So they do have different mechanisms they act, and then you could see that you got different effects. But it is maybe too complex to say why they are doing this. But definitely needs more research to look how different they are, and what might be explaining that. So requires definitely follow-up studies to say that properly.
We're going to take our last commercial break, but before we do that, I want to promote your website one more time, and that is Ville Friman Science, VILLE-FRIMAN science.weebly.com. Great site to go and read about this stuff. If you're concerned about the food you're eating, and you should be, this is a great website to check out. We're going to take a break. Stay tuned. When we come back, I'm going to talk about something I've mentioned over the years, but it's worth repeating again. There's another aspect to these herbicides that we're not discussing, and that is not their effects on the pathogens, microbes, and fungi that they're supposed to be treating, but the consumption of them and what this may mean. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Celluma light therapy. Celluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Celluma, that's CELLUMA, and use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today. Glyphosate. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicell is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicell is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicell. Go to SHR shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. So while this wasn't, I don't expect you to speak to this as it being covered in your research. Your research is profound and very, very important research, by the way. But there's another aspect that's really not being discussed here. We've established that the difference between an antimicrobial and an antibiotic is the dose and the duration of exposure. That's why, you have a regimen. The doctor says, take one of these amoxicillin tablets a day for 20 days or whatever, because they know that absolutely whatever you're targeting will be killed maybe in 10 days, but that extra 10 days is for the ones that are a little resistant, a little stubborn. So this is why you should never stop an antibiotic regimen in the middle just because you feel better. Because what you've done is you've weeded out the weak pathogens, you've let the strong pathogens, you will get sick again. It will come back. But with that being said, we have heard for a decade now, and we know that animal husbandry boasts no antibiotics used in the raising of our chickens or our cows. And there's a reason for that, because antibiotics have proven to be very valuable for two things. Keeping animals that live in very close unnatural quarters from sharing herd diseases. But more importantly, a cow on antibiotics gets fatter and bigger faster. Antibiotics improve quite often a component of the microbiome that makes it more efficient at extracting nutrients from the food you eat while turning down energy expenditure. From an evolutionary perspective, antibiotics are great. In fact, we did a show probably a decade ago that shows the growth of the average American juxtaposed against the application of antibiotics, and you go, oh my God. And then you go to indigenous cultures in Chile and you see these little people. They've never taken antibiotics for 100 years, and they're little people. And so this particular study proposed that the exposure to antibiotics has made us bigger and fatter. Now, keep that for a second. Every time you eat a conventionally grown product that could potentially have some negligible level of glyphosate, dicamba, or some other herbicide, you're effectively eating a non-therapeutic dose of antibiotics. Now, we know that low levels of antibiotics cause antibiotic resistance in the human body, but more importantly, and this was what was proposed by the study, they clearly have an effect on metabolism. They can shift your metabolism into becoming more obese. And so how much of that dicamba are you eating every day? And glyphosate from multiple sources, prepared foods that don't use ingredients that were organically grown, the salad you buy, you go out to the restaurant. We did a show 7 years ago where the author of a study was asking our audience to submit to a glyphosate test. And I got emails from people saying they were shocked how high their glyphosate levels were in their bodies. In Germany, they had glyphosate showing up in human breast milk. So the babies were getting the glyphosate when the mothers were nursing them. So while we're talking about plants and antibiotic-resistant infections, there's low levels of these drugs that are like weak antibiotics that people are consuming every day. When I went to Mexico a few years ago, in the toothpaste, they had what's the name of the one that's in the hand sanitizers? Oh, now I'm going to forget the name. But they had an antimicrobial in the toothpaste.
Mhm.
And it was like, we're getting antimicrobials everywhere. What are they contributing to disease in us? What do you think about that? Is that far-fetched? Am I going off too far?
Well, I mean, we do get like loads of chemicals from the food we eat, from the environment, and you know, I think there's no clear-cut answer. What's the relative importance of that? I think regarding the growth effect with humans, I think it's just like, I think, you know, relatively more important with just having more nutritious diet. We have food available, and we have better health care, and you know, that's probably explaining the increase in size. But yeah, definitely. I mean, it would be interesting to see more research and more kind of, you know, not only sort of case studies, but with big data, how much, you know, herbicides or chemicals our food includes, how much we're ingesting, if they are accumulating in our body or what's happening. So you know, I think there's probably, you know, we get exposed all the time, so it might play an important role.
So we have a viewer that's posting a question. Michael Lippelt says, what would your message be to people like my father who grows corn and soybeans for a living? And obviously they're probably GMO, so I bet he uses a lot of these chemical herbicides. He's been doing it so far for 40 years in southern Indiana. So what should his father think about now?
I think we can. There's no way we could get rid of herbicides. You know, herbicides and pesticides. We definitely need them. But I think my kind of view is that we should maybe explore a bit more of the significance of this herbicide use for the antibiotic-resistant genes, and crucially, how they might actually get into the food chains and food systems, food production systems. We need to use herbicides, otherwise we don't have food on our table. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I think there might be ways to develop these treatments, perhaps.
So, excuse me, it's triclosan. I couldn't think of the name. Triclosan. It was in the toothpaste in Mexico. What about mouthwash like Listerine? I don't think there's any antimicrobials. No, let me rephrase that. I think that the antimicrobial effects of Listerine are probably very, very weak compared to things like glyphosate and dicamba. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there must be some studies out there, but maybe not direct comparison of mouthwater and some herbicides. That would be probably unethical to do with humans. But you know, I think all the antimicrobial soap, I don't know, I think it's not really required, and it has big risk of selecting for antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So you know, as with the COVID, for example, you know, basic soap is good enough to disrupt the viruses. So we don't necessarily need ethanol or you know, anything. You know, soap does the trick, and then also soap does clean up your hands from most of the bacteria as well. So I think it's also kind of a bit of a marketing. So you can kind of think about germs are bad, and you know, you can sell this to people so they can feel that they're safe.
I know a lot of people who use Listerine and complain about GERD and stomach issues, and I've talked to them about it and stop using Listerine for a month and their stomach issues go away. Listerine used to have alcohol in it. Now they've removed the alcohol. They use something else, but I don't think any of those things are good. I really don't. You know, if you have that, I'm sorry.
Not required. You know.
Yeah, they're not required, and if anything, they're going to lead to unwanted changes. So now we're going to talk about a little something else. We're going to kind of change the subject here. So my guest today has a secret. A secret. His secret is that he is with is it a heavy metal band? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a heavy metal band.
And what is their name? What's the name of the band?
It's called Insomnium.
Insomnia. Nice. Very good. And is that you right there?
Yeah, that's me there.
Ah, that's awesome. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Where can people listen to your music? Can they find it online?
They can find it online, insomnium.net. I think that's the web address. And then, you know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you know, just go for Insomnium. So it's a Latin ending. and you should find us, yeah. And on YouTube, we have music videos and stuff out there.
How long has the band been around?
For ages. We started when I was, or when we were teenagers. So when I was 16, I started playing guitar, and we've been going for past 20 years now.
And so, do you have a lot of original songs as well?
Yeah. We've done how many albums? Eight albums. And then, some of the videos, there's a couple of millions views, and then if you quite good following. We toured USA quite a few times, and Europe consistently. So yeah.
Now, with COVID, I guess you didn't have any opportunities to play, right?
No. I think the kind of music industry is really suffering with the COVID. All performing arts, and then hopefully they will bounce back at some point, but I guess it will still take time.
Yeah. Well, keep doing science, because what you're doing is great. What you're doing is going to have impact on health, and that is, there's lots of studies that we talk about on this show. And you really can't take away any actionable steps or even any valuable information other than you learn something new. But I think the research you're doing is very, very critical, because there's going to come a time where antibiotics can't save a person's life because the organism that they've contracted is resistant to everything, and we can't do chemotherapy for infections.
Yeah.
So, I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I think that over time, your research may prove that there are better ways to deal with weeds than slathering a crop with these herbicides.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can only try. I think you need to have the scientific understanding on things. Then you can come up with new potential better solutions. So at least we have to strive for that.
Thank you for being here, Ville.
No worries. My
Take
pleasure.
care. We'll see you again. Take care. That's it for today. And that was a great interview. I got to tell you, pass this one around. I don't think people know that Monsanto holds a patent on combining glyphosate with amoxicillin for use in humans. Glyphosate, make no bones about it, has antibiotic properties. Again, the difference between an antibiotic and an antimicrobial are the dose and duration of exposure. That's it. So there you go. All right, look, we'll see you tomorrow. Please pass the show around, and thanks for being here today.